Happy New Year. Welcome to another episode of the Hollywood Arcade. I'm Steven, and for today's video we're going to be looking at the upcoming MCU spin-off series premiering on Disney Plus January 15th called WandaVision. I'm going to be giving you a little bit of a deep dive into the characters that are going to be showing up in the series, both in the MCU and their comic book origins, and give you my conclusions for what I think are going to be the implications on the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. So if you enjoy the MCU, please sit back, relax, and let's get on with the video. WandaVision is going to be taking a look at both the characters Scarlet Witch and her android lover, Vision. Now, Wanda Maximoff was born in the comic books, as well as her brother Pietro Maximoff, to the X-Men villain Magneto. That makes them both mutants, in fact. Although mutants don't actually exist currently in the Marvel Cinematic Universe due to a former exclusivity right owned by Fox Studios. At the time, they were the only ones who could actually use mutants in movies. Since then, that has changed, however, because Disney Studios bought Fox, as they do. So the upcoming series is most likely going to be a segue into mutants coming into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I believe it's going to be by way of Scarlet Witch. But in order to get into the theory that I have, we have to first look at some of the questions and the teases that the trailer offers us. So I'm going to give you some clips here and we can break it down together. So the first glaring question that is raised when you watch the trailer or even hear the title of the series is, Vision died, right? In the events of Avengers Infinity War, Vision died twice. So the big question is, how was he brought back for the events of the series? The first option, I believe, is something to do with her powers that were granted to her by the Mind Stone. They were enough for her to actually destroy the Mind Stone, and they may be the very thing that brings Vision back. Two is it could be a possible clue that she's having a mental break. We have to remember that she lost her brother in the events of Age of Ultron and then again loses her lover in Infinity War, and an unhealthy, mentally unhealthy Wanda Maximoff is not a good thing. And three is maybe this is a possible version of them from a different timeline or another branch in the multiverse. So we have to remember that in Spider-Man Far From Home, the multiverse was teased for the first time and then further corroborated as a sure thing since there's an upcoming movie in the MCU called Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which this series, WandaVision, is supposed to tie directly into. And so this could be a version of them from a different timeline. I think this may be a combination of all three of these elements, but I'll delve into that a little bit more later. So the second question is, how could she and Vision have children? We see here in the trailer they're both standing around admiring her baby tummy, and there's shots of a crib in the scene as well. But how could an android and a human have children together? So we have to look at her powers a little bit. In the MCU, she and her brother are both gifted their powers when Hydra experimented on them with the Mind Stone. But in the comic books, she's written as a mutant. And though she's called the Scarlet Witch, originally her powers didn't have anything to do with magic. They were just an ill-defined power set that allowed her to alter the probability of an outcome to benefit her and her teammates. Later on down the line, however, they introduced a character named Agatha Harkness, who was an actual witch and trained the Scarlet Witch, Wanda, to further control her powers. And they were then expanded on, and her mutant abilities allowed her to access something called chaos magic. And this actually allowed her to alter the reality around her. And at one point in time, she did create, or through magical means, conceive twins. Now, they ended up being pieces of a demon's soul, a demon named Mephisto, which may come into the MCU a little bit later as well, and I will touch on that at the summary at the end of this video. Fun little side note, Agatha Harkness, the witch that actually trained Scarlet Witch to access magic, may be appearing in WandaVision. Actress Kathryn Hahn plays a character named Agnes, which I believe may be a pseudonym for Agatha Harkness. Agatha Harkness, Agnes. It makes sense to me. I don't know, maybe it doesn't make sense to you, but I think it may be something. So the next big question is, what's with all the different television tropes? We can see here in the trailer that there are different television eras portrayed in the show, from all the way back to I Love Lucy and Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie to the Brady Bunch. And I believe that this is a clue that Scarlet Witch is able to affect the world around her in order to create a version of that happily ever after that she always wanted with Vision before he died. And so she's creating around her different versions of television eras that so represented that happy domestic life that she craves. I'd also like to draw attention to this character here who claims she doesn't know who she is in the series. Well, we know who she is because we've actually met her before. Her character is Monica Rambeau, and the first time we see her, she's a little girl in Captain Marvel, starring Brie Larson. Now, the events of that movie took place in the early 90s, so we can see that she's now grown up and somehow involved in the affairs of Wanda and Vision. Now, I believe that her character in the comic books was called by the superhero name Spectrum, as well as Captain Marvel at one point in time. And the final question is, what's this got to do with mutants? Why would Marvel Studios bring mutants into the MCU, and why would they use Wanda Maximoff to do it? Well, let me explain. In the comic books, the Scarlet Witch starts out with probability-altering powers referred to as hex powers. Later, she has access to chaos magic via her mutant abilities, and this gives her reality-altering powers, which she uses to conceive twin children, using the pieces of a demon's soul. That demon later reclaims those lost pieces of his soul, ending her children's lives, unfortunately. So they bring in Agatha Harkness, her former tutor, to erase the memories of her children, thus sparing her. This lasts for a time until, unfortunately, a teammate makes a backhanded remark mocking her for her desire to have children. This causes all those memories to come flooding back, and Wanda breaks. She ends up seeking vengeance against her team members in the Avengers, holding them responsible for the death of her children, and she ends up killing a few of them. So Pietro ends up coming to her aid and convinces her to create a reality where everyone is happy. And she, being as powerful as she is, actually does it. She creates a pocket dimension where everybody's wishes have come true. Mutants, no longer the minority, feared, and hunted group that they once were, are now a majority and are something of public figures. Peter Parker, for example, his secret identity is no longer secret. Everybody knows that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, and he is also seen as something of a celebrity. This lasts for a little while, but once some of the former members of the main timeline remember their former lives, they come to stop Scarlet Witch, and she has another mental break, this time depowering all mutants. Once they were the minority, now they are nearly extinct, and over 90% of them have lost their mutant abilities. And so this is my theory. I believe that they are going to use a reverse House of M timeline where Wanda, who wasn't born with powers but was later given them via experimentations using the Mind Stone, maybe she feels like a mutant and she wants the rest of the world to feel her pain. And in general, I do believe that the show is going to be a look at this pocket dimension that Scarlet Witch has created for herself. And we have to remember there are already examples of just how powerful she is in the events of Avengers Endgame, for example, where the combined might of Thor, Iron Man, and Thor-powered Captain America, who's wielding Mjolnir, aren't able to affect Thanos to very large a degree. And then in comes a really pissed off Scarlet Witch, and she's able to almost take him down single-handedly until he decides to open fire on the entire battlefield, his own people included. Well, those are my bullet points and my theories for the upcoming series WandaVision, premiering on Disney Plus January 15th. I hope I gave you a little bit of an insight into the characters and maybe a little bit of an insight into where the show is going and possibly its effects on the MCU at large. If you had fun, please click the like button and hit the notification and subscribe to my channel so that you can always be notified when I come out with new videos. The MCU is growing. A lot of characters are going to be getting their own shows on Disney Plus, which are going to affect the overall tapestry of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I'd like to cover a lot of it. So reach out to the comments if you like the video. Let's talk about it if you'd like. Maybe you have some theories of your own. And until the next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.